We have limited thoughts because we see others. We get challenged by other people. We see their limiting thoughts. And other people's limiting thoughts and actions scream at us because we can see them from a mile away. Because we seem to be able to feel their problems. We seem to be able to see their issues. But however, when it comes to us, we tend to get blinded. When it comes to us, we tend to, well, we tend to not see how we're stuck in our ways. How do we recognize it though? Because it seems so obvious to us. When other people have limiting thoughts and actions, it seems to scream at us versus what we'd like to happen. What do we want to happen versus what has happened? That's a big question. Because when we're stuck in the past, we look at things from the perspective of, well, this hasn't happened for me before. I seem to be behind the eight ball a lot. A lot of bad things have happened to me, or a lot of issues have happened to me. I seem to not get lucky, or I seem to have these types of struggles or problems, or I'm going to be struggling for the rest of my life, or I never got married, or I never had children, or whatever that looks like, or I've been divorced multiple times. So we start getting stuck because we see what we are based on our past, and we begin to define our life based on our past, right? That's stuck in our ways. What about being stuck with what other people told us? What about being stuck by what other people have taught us? What about that? What about that? Because I think that we can be stuck in our ways by multiple different things, right? We can be stuck in our ways on multiple levels. How do we analyze this from the beginning? How do we begin to see things clearly? How do we begin to understand where we are stuck in our ways? How do we begin to understand where we are stuck in our ways? How do we begin to understand that? How do we begin to understand how we're stuck? How do we recognize it? And I found a way that we can do this. I found a way that we can do this in a way that's very interesting, because I find that first off, we have to look at where do we feel limited? Where do we feel limited in our life? Where do you feel limited in your life? Where do you feel stuck? Because, when we're stuck in our ways, we have, it's not because we want to be stuck. I don't think that anybody's ever stuck in their ways because they want to be stuck. I don't think anybody's stuck in their ways because they go, you know what, this is a great idea. I'm going to stick myself into these. I'm going to confine myself. I'm going to pigeonhole myself. I'm going to make my life difficult. No, nobody's over there saying that. You're not saying that. I'm not saying that. But it's interesting. I realized the other day I was walking Buddy. Many of you know Buddy the Bull Terrier that I've talked about before, my little boy. He's a sweetheart. And I was walking him the other day, and I was just thinking about some thoughts that I had. And it was first, actually, the pondering began when I started thinking about a limited thought that I ran across with a good friend of mine. And she was talking about something, and it was something small, but it was very limited. And I remember I kind of went, huh. And then I said, that's interesting. I was like, that was a limited thought process based on her upbringing, based on what she's accustomed to, based on her, her life. And then I realized, okay, Ashley, wake up. This is not about her. This is about me. And I realized that me catching a limited thought process by her is me recognizing the fact that I possess that as well. And I was like, wow. And that's kind of how my epiphanies happen, is that you see something in somebody else, and we could sit there and judge it all we want, but we actually step back from the judgment and we say, you know what, I'm actually not going to judge that, because it's not about my judgment. It's actually about me actually recognizing the fact that I too do the same thing with different things. I too do the same thing about different things, right? So when I catch somebody else's limited behavior, right? Isn't it interesting too how when we, and this is a tendency that I think many of us can connect with, is that when we have gone through trials and tribulations in our life, I've chosen poorly in the past. I think we all have, right? We've all learned the hard way. We've all done it. It's painful. But then we see other people walking through the same way, right? We see other people walking the same path, and it can be a struggle to watch. But when I found, and it can be painful to watch too, because we realize what we went through. We can watch what they're going through, and we know that they're not going to probably, unless they're working with someone or hire someone to work with, they're not going to listen to friends, tell them. Everybody's got to learn the hard way, unless you're willing to take that next level. But when we're stuck in our ways and when we see other people who are stuck in their ways, it's a very interesting dynamic because it allows us to actually shine some light on ourselves. And I've realized that still have I still have things that I have to accomplish. I still have thoughts and programming that I have to let go of. I still have set in my ways that I have to become aware of, that I have to get right with, that I have to move forward with, that I have to see myself clearly. And each and every time that someone shows me that they're set in their ways, I realize again that there's something else that I have to work on. And I don't know if we ever end the work that we do. And I don't think we're supposed to. I think this is an ongoing process. It's like going to school. It's like this lifetime that we're in is a school. It's like going to school every day. There's no way out. Can't show up late. Gotta go. Oh, can't take the day off. Oh my God, I'm just so tired of this. I'm so tired of it. No, it's like it's an everyday thing. It's something that we have to deal with every day. It's something that we have to go through every day of our life. And the quicker we are to accepting that and the quicker we are to understanding that, the better it is. To me, it's just like, when you know what you're getting into and you accept the ramifications of it, it all works out. Okay, it wasn't in the brochure. Sorry. I need to create some life brochures, by the way. That would be a really long brochure. I don't know if everything would be in color. Maybe some would be black and white. I don't know. Maybe some in holographic form. Not really sure yet. But, it's like, stuck in our ways. And we're going to be talking about this throughout today's show. And Dan is going to be joining us. Dan Nelson, our resident historian, will be joining us later on today as well. But we're going to be talking about this because how do we recognize it? How do we recognize it? We're going to talk about how we recognize it when we feel limited. When I feel like I'm isolated. When I feel like I'm overwhelmed. When I feel like I'm backed into a corner. When I feel helpless. When I feel hopeless. When I feel like there's no solution. When I feel fear. When I feel sadness or limitation. I know that there's something in my way. But what is it? There's something in my way. And I've realized that the something in my way usually is me. Okay. I mean, just it is. Now, there's some people in our life that quite honestly, they just seem to always get in our way. And those are people that you got to really think about how much you want to spend time with these folks. You got to think about, is this benefiting? Are you learning something from it? Is this a learning tool? Is this something? Because a lot of times when something like that's happening, it's something for us to learn. Now, do we have to keep doing it? It's up to you. But that's what we actually have to think about. We have to actually ask those questions. So when I return, we're going to be talking more about how to recognize it, how to understand it, and how to get clear with it, and how to unstuck ourselves. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes. Good. What was going on?
It was like asking for credentials even though we're already connected, and I didn't even do anything and it fixed itself, so it's really weird.
Jacked up the beginning of the video for sure.
No, I think there was like a black screen for a bit.
I know, right? Hey, so glad that everybody tuned in. We had a little technical difficulties earlier. We have no idea what was going on there, so we apologize. Um, so,
Tower hyping you up.
hey, Eiffel Tower, good to hear from you. Paxton, good to hear from you. Naz, good to hear from you. Vanessa, great to hear from you. Indigo Eyes, great to hear from you. I'm so glad that y'all tuned in. Uh, Turned up return. Not working. We are here live, so we're on commercial break right now on the show. I don't know if y'all can hear that. They probably can. I can't though. Can you hear it?
No,
But the show you can hear.
the show, yeah.
Okay.
Just no commercials.
Okay. So we're not going to hear commercials. So I can't hear my station today, so we're actually communicating by text. The Brittany who's over at the station is actually cluing us in to when we go back on air. It's not by braille, it's directly by text. So we're doing this. So it's all working. We're getting it done. But yeah, I thought this show was pretty timely for a lot of us because I think that many of us are going through this on a day-to-day basis, and when we're able to really reveal, because I think that the biggest thing with the situation is like when people are really stuck in their ways, and I think many of us see it with family and friends, maybe even some of our parents, right, where you see them like stuck in their ways, and it's like, God, I just wish they would see it my way. I wish they would just see it, and it's so in your face. Um, but a lot of times, some of the ways we're stuck in our ways, right, are not as in your face. It's a lot of times too. It's something usually that gets in the way of our own growth, right? It's not, it can be that too. It can be like a large thought process or a societal thought process or a limiting belief system. But I think a lot of times it's limiting in the way that it limits us, right? And so that's why I thought it would be a really good idea to talk about this today because I feel like we're stuck, because of the stuff that we're taught, because of the past, because of the way things went. And we can believe that. We got a minute before we go back on air. And thank God Brittany's on top of this. We're doing good. We're keeping it together, guys. We're keeping it together. Y'all didn't want the commercials anyway. Remember, you said you didn't want them. And I'm okay with them. I'm okay without them. We're going to definitely create some new commercials and stuff like that too. But we're about to go on air here again in 30 seconds. This is working. This is working. Okie dokie. And then Dan's going to call in later in the third segment. So we got him going. So we don't. It's good. It's good. It's good. Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. Today I'm talking about the idea of being stuck in your ways. And isn't it interesting how we catch other people's limited thought processes? It's challenging, right? It's even hard to hear. It even hurts your brain when you hear some people talk about some stuff, right? You go, oh my God, they're stuck in their ways. Oh my gosh. I mean, it can scream at you. It can be so irritating, right? But a lot of times when that's happening, I've realized in my own personal life that when I see that, yes, it's an awareness that I'm aware of, but it's also me becoming more aware of my ways of being stuck in my own way, right? And right before the break, we talked about being stuck from the past, right? A lot of times we can get stuck in that past thought process. We can get stuck in what we're told or what we're taught about ourselves. Because remember, our parents and the people that we live around, they only know as much as they were taught. It's not like they're trying to limit us or be horrible or what have you. But at the same end, some people might be. But for the majority, I think that many of us are just limited. If we're limited, we only know what we've been told. We've only known what we've been taught. thought. I think a lot of times we've been stuck in a low self esteem, low self worth component where we find that we're doing things in our life that really is not helping us. We're in relationships that we don't need to be in. We're acting out in activities or we're using substances or whatever that don't help us. We're around people that aren't raising us up, but quite the opposite. And so we find ourselves in this limited behavior based on our beliefs on how we're not good enough or we're not valuable enough. We might be surrounded by other people. We might be in a community that seems to be pulling you down. Or you might be surrounded by people who also have those same limiting beliefs, right? And so when they have those limiting beliefs, they believe in them too. And so when they're trying to do something to better themselves, they're not going to probably do it because they don't feel like it's ever going to work for them. And if you try to do something like that, they might sit there and naysay you or put you down or don't even try. Because I tried to do that before, it didn't work for me. Also, what about the limited experiences that we have? And that's why I find so interesting is that when just the idea of traveling. And I know that I haven't been able to travel much, and I know that many of you haven't at all. And I know that probably everybody on this feed that's listening to the show on Facebook or listening to the show on one of the radio stations around the United States that's playing it here on Live Your True Life Perspectives. I know that many of us have not traveled, but have you been around when you have traveled and you've seen how other people live, you've seen how other societies live, you start putting perspective in your life, right? And that's something very small and very simple to do, as much as we possibly can and financially afford. But at the same time, it can really raise our vibrational level to see other things and to see experiences and how other people do it outside of ourselves. And so let's get into this real quick before we get into the break is how do we recognize that? First off, it's about when you're feeling down or limited, like you feel like your life is limited or you feel like your life is isolated or you feel like you're overwhelmed. I know in my life, okay, when I feel like there's no solution, when I feel like there's a fear, when I feel overwhelmed, when I feel extreme limitation, okay, and I think limitation is a really good word here. When I feel extreme limitation, there's something that I'm not connecting with. There's something that I'm believing in that's not true. And it can be hard because if we have been raised in a life of limitation and we've been raised in an environment where people keep telling us that we are limited in what we can do, we believe that, right? And so sometimes when we have that limitation, we just believe, well, it's just par for the course. This is the way my life's always been. But I feel like when we begin to see our life truly, we begin to actually see it as okay, this limitation has been something that has been in my life. It's been something that I've accepted, not believed in, accepted. Now, do I have to continue to accept this limitation? And it can be challenging because you can see other people doing really well. You can see other people changing their life, and it seems like you keep getting the limitation. Why is that? And that's something that we will talk about here later on in the hour, which I think is very valuable to discuss, right? We're going to talk about that. Dan is going to be joining us, our resident historian is going to be joining us here in just a few minutes. And then I'm going to give you some tips and some real ways of overcoming this, some real ways of really looking at things, some real ways to really understand where did it begin and how do we eliminate it. Live Your True Life Perspectives with me, your host, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes. Can I get you a phone? Can I get your phone here? Okay, let's do this. I occasionally do random Mickey Mouse sounds, okay? I do. I used to make sounds. I was the only child, I mean, you had to entertain yourself, for God's sakes. It's like if you played ball, you'd just throw the ball to yourself. It's nothing like a wall and a tennis ball to do a lot of. You're like, you had a brother. You have a brother. Yeah, George has a brother, by the way. I don't have any brothers or sisters, so anybody that's here on the feed, you know what it's like when you don't have anybody to hang out with. You have to make up your own stuff, and I've done it my whole life, I feel like. It's fun, though. I always wanted an older brother. My mother said it was a little too late to ask for that. I thought that was a little on the nose. I did. I was like, come on now. Come on. Come on, I was like, touche. What's the attitude for? So let's call Dan. Get him. Let's see. 214.
Hey, George.
Hey, how's it going?
All right, turn off the Facebook share.
Yeah, we're not running commercials on there. I can't hear the station, so we're just going by braille here. But Brittany's awesome. She's hooking us up with second by second, play by play, so it's good. And
Okay.
and nobody wanted to hear the commercials on Facebook anyway.
Yeah, I already saw
That's
some
probably
calls.
true.
Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna roll into the segment, and then you're gonna count down on time. So when we start I'll let you know right when we start, and you can start your timer on 16.
Okay.
Okay, and then how long do you think you say?
I don't think it'll take 7 minutes.
Well, I got that. I'm gonna take care of. I'm gonna make sure we have that at least that time. But yeah,
Okay.
let's start. When Brittany gives me the time, I'll have you start. And what I'll
Shoots up a flare.
yeah, exactly. She's good though, man. She's got it down to the science here. We're down to the tens. We're down to the tens. But yeah, but what I'll do is I'll mute just so you know. I'll mute the audio on you until we start. So when I do, but I'll say, hey, we're starting, and then boom. So don't worry. Don't be like, oh my God, something's wrong. Where are you at? Where in the world are you right now?
Orange County, my mom's house.
Oh, cool.
Getting her ready to move to Texas. Doesn't everybody want to be there?
Apparently so. Apparently so. Everybody wants to be here. Everybody wants to be here. Lord. Yeah, we're going to see the prices skyrocket.
Yeah. California people got plenty of money to throw around.
Yeah, exactly.
Like her house is a little cracker box house. The house has raised in, and it's worth just shy of $1 million probably. Supposedly somebody wants to pay her $1 million. We'll see what happens.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like
And
your house is the biggest wealth creator she's ever had.
wow. I want a couple of cracker box houses in California. Anybody got any? we'll take some. We'll take some. I'll redo it for you. We'll work on it. We'll make it work. We'll make it work. Okay, so we're here in a little bit. Remember, it's 16. 16 from the countdown. It's good to hear your voice. Yeah, I need to get you in. We need to talk about scheduling to get you in so we can record some stuff too.
Yep.
Okay, it looks like we're about to start. Okay, so I'm gonna plug you in, and then I'm gonna mute you for a second. Is that okay? Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
I'm watching you on Facebook. I just no sound.
Okay, here we go. Start. We're going to start the counter now. Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, I've been talking about being stuck in our ways and how to identify that, how to understand it, because we usually see it from other people, right? We usually see how other people are stuck in their ways, and that's usually the way that we can see, well, we see other people's stuff, but see, judgment is judgment, right? But I found that if we can let go of judgment and we can see what the real truth behind this is, we begin to understand why we're here. We begin to understand what we're doing. We begin to understand the concept of where we're going. And that's what's so important, is that when we see other people do things or we hear other people say things that irritate us, it directly relates to understanding a little bit about us. So how do we begin to recognize this? Okay, so I talked about the limiting, the isolating, the overwhelming. Anytime that we feel lesser than, it's something that we need to examine. So I want you to begin to think about, if we take a look at the limiting thoughts or the beliefs that we have, right? We just take a look at it. I ask you, because these are very important things, where did it begin? It's almost like, okay, if you were dealing with a situation and there was something, let's say that there was a rumor or a conversation going around, and you're trying to figure out how to get down to the nitty gritty of how it began, where it started, who started it, and how do you end it. This is the same thing when it comes to a belief, right? So it's like the belief, where did it begin? Where did this thought process go? When did it start? When was the seed planted, right? When was the seed planted? Who planted the seed? Who planted it? Was it society? Was it school? Was it parenting? And then the next question is, how does it benefit you? How does it benefit you? Because that's the question. Because anything that we're holding on to, belief system wise, has to benefit you. It has to. If it doesn't benefit you, then what are we doing? If it doesn't benefit you, then why? Because if something doesn't benefit you, we've got to start letting it go. Okay. Now, something can benefit you in a painful way, like for example, identifying certain things in our life. We might not be happy about some of the things we identified, doggone it, but you know what? We identified it and we're moving forward. We might not always agree with everything, but you know what? Guess what's cool about it is we can change things. We have the power to change. So how do we get unstuck? How do we get unstuck? Well, first off, it's about changing some of those past situations. Realizing we can't change the past, but we can change the way that we look at the future. We can change the way that we see our reality. We can change who we surround ourselves with. We can change those thought patterns. When we catch our limiting thought patterns, where is this coming from? Where was this derived from? Why did I begin to conceptualize this? Why am I going down the primrose path of this situation? Why aren't I seeing myself in a powerful position? Why? So why is that? Where is this coming from? Because we have to literally dissect our thoughts. Haven't you ever been in a conversation with somebody and the other person's talking about something and you're definitely not seeing eye to eye, right? And you start asking questions like, where did you come up with this? I mean, if you're being positively interested and having a sparring, comfortable, non-nasty debate, how did you derive this? Okay, so that's from, okay, and where did that come from? Okay, so where did you get that idea from? Okay, and see what I'm saying? You basically peel the onion back to try to figure out where even if you think it's a bonehead idea, where this came from. Well, we don't do that in our own mind. We do that with other people. We'll sit there and cross-examine somebody to the ninth degree, right, to try to figure out what's going on in their mind and why would they ever think something that's crazy or so limiting. But what about in our own life? When was the last time that you did that in your own mind? That's the question. When do we do it in our own mind? That's what's so powerful. Because when we begin to say, okay, I am feeling really limited right now. I am thinking very limited. Oh my gosh. What do I do now? Where did it come from? Where did it start? Why do I feel that way? Okay. Well, I feel this way because this happened to me last year when I was trying to do something in my life to become more successful and it set me back. Okay, so what does that mean? A lot of times the brain tries to extrapolate. It takes one thought, one situation, and it mixes it with something else, right? And so it can be very black and white. Well, this happened, so that's going to happen. Or this happened, so I'm never going to have this happen. One bad thing happens, we correlate that to something else that happened that we consider BAD, and then we connect the dots with that. But does it really have to be that way? And life is not ever black and white. It's really that stuff in the middle they call gray. Make up whatever color you want. I don't care if you don't like gray, pick something else. But to think about it, it's like that's what it's really about. So why am I believing in my limitation? Okay, so I'm believing in my limitation because I was raised in a dynamic that was told to me that life is challenging, life is tough, life is horrible. I'm going to have to, scrape and scratch to get anything that I can. And I'm going to believe that other people are going to try to take advantage of me. Now, will people try to take advantage of you? Sure. Will there be situations where you feel like you're behind the eight ball? Yes. But is everything that way? It's almost like the other way around. People, it's going to be easy. It's going to be this. It's going to be that. And then it doesn't happen that way. It's like, okay, well, I haven't ever seen life to be completely easy either. But I found that the more friction we have in our life, right? The more friction, there's something going on. I found that the more friction I have in my life, there's something that I'm doing to create friction. It's not just other people giving it to me. It's that there's something in my life that I'm also co-creating that's creating this friction as well. So it's like, what do we have? What are these thoughts about ourselves? Are you thinking about limiting thoughts? Are you feeling as though things aren't working out for you? And how often, when something comes your way, do you automatically see kind of the negative thought process quicker than you see the other side of the coin? How often, when someone's talking to you, do you feel like they're ridiculing you or putting you down or making fun of you? How often do you colorize and narrate what's happening versus actually taking it for face value? I realized that one of the things that I've done in the last, 15 years to really unstuck myself is to eliminate that negative broken record in my head that keeps me stuck, right, in the narration of my life. You know, I'm Ashley, and this has happened to me, and that happened to me, and this happened to me, and this horrible thing happened to me. It's like, haven't you ever had someone walk in and literally give you the play-by-play of every negative thing that happened in their life, and you're like, wow, gosh, that's painful. But that's what they live by. That's their story. It's like I realize that we have to eliminate the story. I realize that the story doesn't define us. I realize that we're not limited by the story. I also realize that we are not held down by our negative broken record. That broken record is all the negative things about us, all the problems. And that's something that I work with clients to do, is to literally, it's hard to find. It's very sneaky. It's almost like, when you go into a restaurant and the music is down just enough that you have to be really paying attention to catch that there is music. And then you have to really pay attention to the fact of what the music is, like what song it is. And everybody's always amazed because I can always hear it, know exactly what song and sing the lyrics, right? That's what I find in people's heads, right? Is that negative broken record about themselves and how bad they are and all the problems with them. But it's really low because it's been running forever, that it's just right there. Hard to find. It's hard to spot because if you don't know what you're looking for, you just won't find it. But once you eliminate that, all of a sudden things change because you're no longer being limited and controlled by your thought processes. You're actually being in the moment. And that's how we get to the moment. That's how we actually make that happen. That's how we move into the moment by moment, play by play. That's how we actually do what we have to do. That's what's so powerful. So right now I want to change gears for a second. I want to talk about cool historical stuff. It's all about perspective. And again, a lot of times we can change our limiting thought process by learning about things and by educating ourselves on stuff that did happen in the past. It's always interesting to have a history lesson. And, I found one of the coolest historians ever, Dan Nelson. Dan Nelson is a genealogist that does this, and he actually helps you find your past and your family and the family tree and all the interesting stuff, and who knows who you might be related to. Dan, great to have you back on the show on Live Your True Life Perspectives. How are you doing, sweetheart?
Doing good. Really glad to be back. It was a long winter without the radio show to do on Saturdays.
Well, I'm just glad to have you back. And it's interesting. I always get inspired by your stories. What do you have to share for us today?
Well, this story is actually 366 years old, and a lot of these stories I share, they might be that old, but they wrap up within a 5, 10, 20-year span. This story I came across in 2006, and it was still alive. So you have something that's bridged over 350 years of what occurred. And I updated this story in 2006, 2012, and the final update was 2016. So that's sort of the span of this. So what happened was, way back in 1655, a guy named William Payne, who was one of the original settlers of Massachusetts, he wrote in his will that he was going to leave 35 acres of seafront property in Ipswich, Massachusetts, for the benefit of the public school children, and saying that the land should never be sold or wasted. Now, you got to keep in mind, in 1655, when you looked at the ocean, you didn't say, wow, what great scenery, I could come hang out here on the weekends, and, build cottages and all that. Basically, it was cold, you couldn't farm it, who needed it unless it was going to be a place to bring your goods ashore. So over time, obviously, we've acquired a different view of the seashore. So what this led to was 167 cottages were built that tenants lived in, and then that rent went to the school district to help these kids. So, it was a great idea, great program, and it generated $2.4 million over the last 25 years. That would have been the end of the 1900s into 2006. In 2006, the tenants filed a lawsuit, said, hey, they're increasing the rent too much. This is going to hurt us. We need some relief here. So they sort of all worked out a deal and went to court, and they said that why don't you sell this to us for $32 million? The school district will get $32 million, and we won't have to worry about rent increases anymore. Well, then people in the public interest said, well, first of all, that land's worth $41 million. Secondly, it was very clear in his will that he said it could not be sold. Well, the Attorney General of Massachusetts, she sort of overrode that, said that doesn't make sense, and we need to, disband the trust. And of course, there were people concerned. You just basically say, well, what this guy said, we're not going to do. Some 350 days or 350 years later. So they, had these lawsuits going back and forth and basically saying, well, maybe it wasn't professionally managed and stuff. And just go back to the will, what it said was the reason he did this was there was a 1647 colonial law that required communities with more than 100 families to set up a grammar school to prepare students for admission to the College of Cambridge, which is Harvard College. It was just referred to that then. And to prepare young men for the ministry. So that was what he was sort of getting this set up for. It was like preparatory school almost. And so what his actual words were, I give unto the Free School of Ipswich the little neck of land, alt Ipswich, commonly known by the name of Geoffrey's Neck, for which is to be and remain to the benefit of the said school of Ipswich forever, as I have formerly intended, and therefore the land not to be sold or wasted. Well, when they went and took a look at it, there was accusations of mismanagement and stuff, and that really a lot of money hadn't gone to the schools. And here's the hitch. It turns out the trustees who were supposed to be taking care of things, they were renting the cottages at below market rents. They had no reason to raise rent. So when that sort of came out, it became a bigger driver to sell it. Of course, the school district would get the sale proceeds. They'd get the $32 million, and hopefully they could, invest that and stream it out. So in the end of the day, there was also $1 million erosion issue that, that by selling it, they didn't have to deal with. But at the end of the day, it was 2016. I finally got back the answer on where it was at, and it was sold to the residents. So, the question you sort of have here when you look at a will, all of us should have wills. And when you lay stuff out, do you say, okay, do what I said in my will, or judge my intent and decide later if my intent would have caused a different action to be taken? And that's sort of, the dilemma this created, but it was settled based on saying, oh, no, we need to judge the intent of the will, not what the will says.
That's wild. What year? What year was this?
I was 1655.
Wow, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, and it sort of brings up a comparable story. I'm sitting in my mom's house, and there's a school that I went to. The grammar school's behind us here, and that school, when the land was given, the family that gave it said, as long as it's used as a school. If it's not used as a school, it reverts to the family. So probably in the town I grew up in, there was a dozen schools when I was a kid. It's down to 3. This one is not at all geographically centered, but they bust the kids in because the school district can't get any money by selling this school. It will go back to the family. So there's another example, not 350 years old, but probably 50 years old, if not at least 50 years old, probably 60 years, that somebody's intent in their will still having an effect on how the land's used today.
That's awesome. Dan, it's been great to have you on the show. I can't wait to hear what you have to tell us next week as well. And when we return, we'll be talking more about these limited thought processes, how to make these changes in our life, how to recognize it, how to become more mindful, and things you can do right now to be more powerful in your life. Stay tuned, because Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. Well, you know it. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes. Good job. That was great. That's insane. Uh, that's pretty cool. That's hilarious. That's hilarious. So, are you gonna bring her back? Are y'all bringing her back, or are y'all packed? Okay. Okay. Good. Good. When are you getting back in town? Okay. Well, that'd be great. That'll be great. I look forward to it. And then, so next week you're out and about too, right? Where are you gonna be next week? Okay. Okay. Let's talk. Let's talk this week on Monday and figure out if we want to pre-record and when you want to do that. Yeah, we can just pre-record it, and I can either run it live or I can just pre-record the show. Perfect. Yeah, I'll reach out to you on Monday. I gotta drive up north between sessions, and I'll call you when I'm driving up there. Have a good one, sweetie. Have a good weekend. Good luck with everything. Take care. Bye. Bye. Okie dokie, we got one segment left here. One segment left, guys. One segment. One segment. Yes. Okay. Dan's stuff is always very interesting. I always find history interesting because those are things that you don't really hear or find in the history books, and I think it's interesting to be able to learn about things and all that great stuff. And
Yeah, he's not just googling stuff, right?
yeah,
He has a whole database.
yeah, it's cool, right? It's not just stuff that you find on Google or. It's very interesting. Okay, we got 30 seconds. 30 seconds. Thanks for hanging in with us, guys. Thanks for hanging in. Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. We just heard from Dan Nelson, our resident historian, and I always find history very fascinating. It's very interesting, and the stuff that he talks about, the history lessons that he talks about, you can't really find. I mean, he does a lot of research to make this a reality. So going back to the concept of us talking about being stuck in our ways and how to recognize it, and right before we were talking about our historical perspective, it was like I was saying, let's take a look at those limiting thoughts or beliefs. Where did they begin? When was the seed planted? Right? Who planted it? I mean, it could be about anything. It could be about your ability. It could be about your success. It could be about what can happen in your life. It could be about if you're going to be happy, if you're going to get married. It could be about racism. It could be about anything. I mean, we're taught we have seeds that are planted in our mind, right? Okay. And, the things that we will or will not do, the things that we can and cannot do, the things that we believe about people. And I think that, a lot of this stuff was planted, right? Now, does it benefit us? Did the planting of the seed, does this benefit us, or is this something that we need to let go of? Is this something that we need to dig out? Is this a weed that we need to let go of? That has served its purpose at one point in time, it no longer serves our purpose because we're beginning to understand who we are. Every time we eliminate a limiting belief and a limited thought, we become more and more who we become. We become more and more us. We become more and more authentic. We become more and more real. So I'm asking you, how often do you catch others with their limiting thoughts? Okay, that's the question. I'm sure some of you say every day and twice on Sunday. You catch it all the time. How often do we identify and catch the fact, okay, this is waking us up to the fact that there's something within me that I need to be aware of? How often do the limiting thoughts of others irritate you? Because I've realized that sometimes when things irritate me, it's a direct response that there's something similar or there's something that I have to deal with. It could be very different. It could be very different, like a mirroring situation where it looks completely opposite. It's almost like a funhouse mirror, but there's something there. How often do you identify any thoughts that are holding you back or not at your highest level? How often are you being super mindful where you can catch when you start identifying yourself and your life with thoughts that are holding you back? How often do you catch those limiting thoughts? How often do you catch them in action? Because I found that if you can catch them in action, because what happens is sometimes we don't catch the thought. Sometimes we just catch the action. Like instead of doing something that we should be doing, we don't do it because we go on and concede the fact that it's not going to work anyway. It's like not applying for the job that we think we could apply for, but somebody else is going to get it because you know what? Last time I did, I applied, I didn't get it. So why am I even going to bother this time? What are some of the areas of your life that you don't feel good about or you feel held back? Identify those. What are some of the areas that you feel maybe not good enough or feel held back? And what thoughts do you house around this particular position in your life? Is it romance? Is it love? Is it family? Is it career? Is it spirituality? Is it physicality? Is it your physical life? Is it health? Think about that. And what do we house around that? What are our thoughts and feelings around the situation that's not working for us in our mind? And the last thing is I want you to start being super mindful because in order to catch these limiting thoughts, we have to catch, the connection between us catching other people's limiting thoughts. We have to be able to catch our actions that are actually we're the actions that we're doing based on the limiting thoughts that might be a little undercover. And we have to be literally focused enough and aware enough to catch those thoughts and what the impact of those thoughts are so we can begin to change them. This is the way that we can make changes in our life. This is the way that we can become more and more ourselves, away from the stuff that no longer serves us, away from the things that no longer benefits us, and the things that actually makes us a whole well-rounded person who is actually able to live their true life. If you haven't already, please check out the YouTube channel. We have a YouTube channel here. It's just under my name, Ashley Burgess, Berges. Nothing fun and crazy, cute little comment. We could have come up with a cool little phrase, but we just used my name. So go to Ashley, Berges on YouTube. You can check out the two websites at ashleyburgess.com or the 10-day challenge, the and the number 10daychallenge.com. And so check those out. We put out new video content every week on YouTube. If you'd like to work with me, you can definitely reach out on ashleyburgess.com. You can click on coaching sessions and you can set up a time to meet with me ASAP. You can also send me an email. Go to ashleyburgess.com, click on that contact page, send me an email, and I'll get back to you ASAP. I hope that you've connected with the show, working on that mindfulness, letting go of those limited thought processes, because guess what? You're amazing, you're awesome, and this is just the next step toward it. You got this, by the way. Live your true life perspectives with me, your host, Ashley Burgess. We'll be back in. Well, I'll be back this time. I'll be back this time in 3 shakes. Thank you, Brittany. Have a good time tonight. So, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate it. We're going to have another show for you next week, obviously. And we are on at this time all the time. We've been pre-recording the last few shows. The last couple of shows that were pre-recorded based on being out of town are up on YouTube. They're up on Spreaker. They're up on the website as well. So Spreaker, you can just go to Ashley Burgess. And it's got, I think we have about 500 shows. We don't have all the shows up there. I think we just our last week's show was, or week before last show was 666. We're at 667 last week, 668 now. in the way that we've been organizing. I think we're way more than that, but it just is what it is. But shows are up, so if you missed any of those shows, please check those shows out. The last one I did was on personal programming. The other one was about the new norm, what that means. I'm sure that many of you have thoughts on what that means to you. And so all is good. I'm so glad that y'all have tuned in. Jody, great to hear from you. Sophia, great to hear from you. Eiffel Tower, The Foreigner, great to hear from you. Mystique, great to hear from you. I'm glad that a lot of you are doing some healing journeys. Naz, great to hear from you. Frolicking Elf, Indigo Eyes, so good to hear from all y'all. I just want to make sure I didn't miss Zen and me. Great to hear from you. Let's see here. Diane, great to hear from you. How are you doing? Let's see. Anybody else that I've missed here? I don't want to miss anybody. Yeah. Okay, so everybody, thank you for tuning in. We will be back on next week. Same time, same place. And I'm trying to think too. I'd like to do a little bit of a Q&A maybe after next week's show. We'll figure it out, see how that rock and rolls. And see where we can go from that. If you haven't already checked out the latest YouTube video that we put out, I think on Thursday. I think it was on Thursday or Friday. I think it's called Why I Can't Leave the Relationship, or Why Can't I Leave the Relationship, or Why Can't I Leave? I think that's how it's titled. I should know because I wrote the title and description, but I don't. But anyway, it's the latest one up there. So let me know what you think about it. And in the meantime, have a wonderful weekend. If you have any questions, want to connect with me, obviously you can go to my email address or go to the contact page on my website, ashleyburgess.com, and just click on that contact and send me a message. Or you can send it to coachburgess@gmail.com. So love to hear from you. We got great shows for you coming up this next few weeks. Dan's going to probably be calling in next week, or actually I'm going to have to pre-record him because he's going to be in a non-cell area. But we have a lot of great stuff coming up here in the next few weeks. We're going to be talking about some really cool stuff. I'd like to start talking about some trauma bond stuff. I'd like to start talking about devaluation and discarding on a bigger level. I think that the word needs to get out so people understand what they're really dealing with and what that means when it happens and how to safeguard yourself. So thanks for listening to the first part of this video, which we were having some technical difficulties, which we thought we had figured out, but apparently the live studio restream that we used decided, no, it wanted us to go through it. So anyway, it is a learning curve, right? So have a great one. Have a great weekend. If you need anything, reach out. Do not hesitate. Thank you all so much for tuning in. And have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. I'll see you next week. Love you. Bye.